we want to do today is this meeting is being, okay, all right, okay. What I want us to do today for the introduction is to really focus on abnormal psychology. So that would be the theme and the title of this particular class. So instead of intro to psychology, it would be abnormal psychology. And so we will spend some time, looking at what some of the impact that our social environment do have on our personality development, our behavior. And so, for example, I will reference a lot of Bible passages that will help us to sort of make some application based upon the biblical writings, both the Old and New Testament. And we will then, of course, compare them with the scientific data in terms of understanding, human behavior. And so the overall goal is, for example, in John chapter 10 and verse 10, Jesus outlined his mission very clearly, is so that we can have life and have it more abundantly. In other words, to be fully alive. And so there are many aspects within our society, within ourselves that, impact negatively on us being able to enjoy that full and abundant life. Hence, the theme for our study would be abnormal psychology. In other words, looking at those things that impact on our lives negatively. So, for example, in James chapter 4, and I think if you look at the first 4 verses, James raised a question, but of course he knew the answer. And the question is, what causes, war and quarrel among us, within our homes, within our society, within our communities, what's the source of that? And James clearly says that it is our lust, it is our passions. And so he even went on to say, we want and we can't receive, so we kill, we commit murder, we war, we fight with each other. And then he says, sometimes even when we ask to spend on our own lust out of the wrong motives, and therefore we don't receive. And then he says within the same context that there are those of us simply who do not ask. And I think the point there in the idea that we do not ask God might be, the emphasis there might be that we don't recognize God as a source of our guidance and our strength. And so we rely on our own strength, we rely on ourselves. And so as a result of that, our behavior can be very disastrous in many ways. So that's kind of where we want to kind of question. Now, Paul, in Romans 7, if you recall, and if I say anything you don't understand, you really need to stop me and get, a clarification on it. And so there might be some things that I might say that you don't necessarily share. I want to hear what that is. I mean, this is a learning community. We're all co-learners. I would rather us change that dynamics of teacher-student relationship to a co-learner. In other words, I learn from you, you learn from me. And so I think that that's a better and more productive way of looking at this situation. So, Paul make the statement that the things that he wanted to do, he couldn't do. And I mean, he used a lot of adjectives, a lot of, metaphors to sort of bring home the message that, somewhere along the line, we don't have it in us to do the things we want to do. And so and then he, at the end of all of that, he gave thanks, he acknowledged the work of Christ, and he felt indebted to Christ in the sense that as a result of Jesus' interaction, his death, he is now able to come in compliance and to be able to lead a productive life. And so, and I think that's interesting when you look at that, because here you're talking about, how do we deal with, when we look at abnormal behavior, what role does the gospel play in that in terms of a corrective, a way? We go to psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists, we do medicine in an attempt to be happy, to feel better, and all of that. And yet, we have statements like Jesus is a great physician. We have statements as the gospel is all powerful. So the question for us might be, how do we understand statements like that the gospel is all powerful? Powerful in what way? How does it change? What are we talking about? Is it powerful in the sense of getting us to heaven? Can it improve the quality of our lives now, in the here and now? Can it make me a better student, a better human being, a better Christian, a better husband, a better father? What exactly, are we talking about here? So those are going to be some of the challenges that we will be looking at when we look at abnormal behaviors. And so some of these, I want to give a maybe final definition of kind of what we are talking about here in terms of abnormal behavior. And here in this particular, this is like $100 and something book. So I'm not even going to even suggest it. It's just too expensive. But extreme social deviance. It's extreme, we're defining it, extreme social deviance, breaking into people's house, committing murder, what I mean? Robbery, the such devastating acts such as incest, where father will rape his daughter, obesity. When you look at our society, all of the ills of society, a lot of the deviant behaviors that we're seeing. So that's kind of what we talk about when we talk about abnormal behaviors. So deviant behaviors that do not fall within the norm of society. Society has certain expectations that we will respect the rights of each other. We will not violate the rights of each other. But also, that's exactly what the role of both the Old Testament and the New Testament was all about. Teaching us how to honor. As a matter of fact, the Old Testament, Moses talks about that you ought to love God, love yourself, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus kind of summarized the entire commandments as, to love the Lord thy God, to love God, and to love your neighbors as well. So let me see. I turn this off. Somebody is challenging me here. Okay. So Jesus kind of, in a nutshell, kind of summarized, the whole trajectory of the Old Testament in the sense that we are to love ourselves, love God, love ourselves, and love our neighbors as ourselves. So when we move outside of that, it brings us into an area that is sometimes categorized as being deviant, because those behaviors are not within the context of the social norms of society. Also, we have distress within ourselves as well. And so those are some of the things that we basically will be kind of focusing on. So for the rest of this session, which is we end at, I think, maybe in maybe in 15 minutes or so. When we look at our behavior are being impacted by, our behaviors are being impacted in different ways. And so one of the first area is genetics, our genes. You know, our parents, you know, we bring that portion in terms of our genes. You know, you may notice some students will be taller than others. And as a result of that, they may have certain, you know, attitudes about that, you know. We maybe have a certain color. Your eyes may have some people may have blue eyes, brown eyes. I mean, all those are part of that genetic piece that we get from our parents, essentially. You know, we may even argue that, you know, our level of intelligence, you know, the structure of the brain, you know, that is something that we might also inherit. We do know that there are certain mental health issues. For example, depression. There's certain ways, well, people do inherit that. It seems like if your mom and your parents had a whole history of depression, chances are it may show up with you as well. People have even tried to connect alcoholism, you know, that with genetically, somehow we can pass it on. You know, those are some of the things that we're being told. You know, whether or not we believe all of those things are another story. But what are some of the other areas in terms of your genes that you may feel that you got from your parents? That impact your behavior, who you are? Did I lose you guys?
Yes, sir. We are here, sir.
Okay. So what are, in terms of your genes that you got from your parents, what are some of the things that that may impact your behavior? Now, there are certain medical illnesses as well that gets passed on. You know, one of the things that in interview, you know, a doctor may want to know your family history. Was there cancer in your family? And the reason that they are looking at that, they want to see that if that was passed on to you genetically. And so whether you are susceptible to that. So you may get those questions if you do a physical. Doctors may want to know about that. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So in the same sense that you are talking, we can, well, other than catching color of eyes or certain things in our body from the genes of our parents, we may catch some sickness as well.
Yes.
And I believe that's why you say when we go to the hospital, doctor would probably ask us about some of the sickness that our parent could have had, you know?
Right. For example, sickle cell, right? Which is found in African Americans. Of course, that is something that's passed on. Also, if glucose, for example, you know, blindness to a certain extent can be passed on. So if your mom and dad both had it, chances are at some point you're going to lose your sight. You could lose your sight as well. So that's kind of passed on genetically as well.
Yes.
So, but the question for us though might be, what about the mental health side of that? I mean, that's the medical side. What about the mental health side in terms of, you know, your behavior? And so,
yes.
So that's, go ahead.
I believe that in like aggressivity, someone could get that from his parent. Well, normally I would not say directly from the genes, but because you know that you are being raised by your parents, and so since they are at home, they would be the majority of influence to you. You know, the way that they are acting, and as we have seen that in the childhood development, so the parents are like I mean, the model of the child. So they are going to try to copy all the manners of the parents. So if the parent is talking like aggressively with the child, saying certain bad words and so on, now the child would be raised in that particular way where he's going to, behave in the same manner such as the parent used to behave with the child.
So what you're saying is, on one hand, you have the genes, and on the other hand, you have the environment.
Yes, sir.
You're saying that the direction that the genes take in its development depends on the environment that the child is raised in. So the combination of the genetic makeup and the environment have an impact in shaping the behavior. That's kind of what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
And which is a very, most cognitive therapists or behavioral therapists, that's kind of their view in essence, so that you have the community, so you have the individual in the community, and that it's a life world and they impact each other. There's a reciprocal sort of behavior here, so that what helps the direction that the genes take has a lot to do with the environment that you place the child in. So one of the passage that may indicate that was, I think it's, I don't remember it right now, I think it's Proverbs chapter 22, something like verse 26 or something like that, where it says, raise up a child in the way that
It should go.
and that when he gets older, he will not depart from it.
Yes, sir.
So that's right. So that's is what you're saying. The environment is what shapes our behavior. So if you grew up, if you were socialized in a very toxic environment, obviously you're going to have the outcome of that. Now, one of the areas, I mean, the socio. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that that's the reason why I made my point in the way I did it, because I think even if a child was born to a certain parents and they, as usual, choose not to raise that children, and then another parents adopted that child, even though the child get certain things from the genes of his, I would say legitimate parents. Now, because that child is being raised by other parents, which does not have the same kind of behavior than his legitimate parent, I think that this, no matter what that children or that child catch from his, real parents.
Well, let's just say the biological parents. The biological
Yes,
parents in the course.
Yes, biological parent, yeah. So because he was being raised by other parents, he would probably go in the way that he was raised, rather than taking, behavior from the genes of his biological parents.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of debates about that today. There are a lot of, within the social and within the field of psychology and so on, where people still believe that, the genes do have a significant impact in a person's development. So for example, a person who was the result of pregnancy, mom was, in dire poverty. She did not take care of herself during the pregnancy, maybe was nutritionally, she did not eat all the right things, do all the right things. She began to drug and not taking care of herself during that period, that the fetus can be severely impacted. And some of those, the impact can have long-lasting impact, even such as the weight of the child, the way the brain develops, So it can affect the child, cognitively. The child can be disabled, develop learning disability. There are a lot of number of things that can happen. For example, we know in the early days of AIDS that there were children who were born with AIDS because mom during the pregnancy was impacted with that disease. So we do know that genetically there is still, we know with children with coming out of the alcohol situation, that the brain sometimes are smaller because the brain develops, so it has a tremendous impact on that. And that certainly can have an impact on the behavior, such as ADHD and stuff, and such like that. So even schizophrenia, some of the severe psychotic disorders, which we will look at as we go through here, could have certain neurons that are not functioning properly. And therefore, people begin to lose, even though they may come from a healthy family system, to still have, a lot of the residue of coming from that genetic pool, so to speak. Now, of course, the question that you might have is how effective is the gospel, the power of Jesus said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. How powerful is the truth to reverse all of those damages and to bring about a healthy individual? So that's kind of a debate that we can have on that. So here we have the genetic aspects. You mentioned the social environment, which might be the family system, because some children may grow up in foster homes. It depends. Some kids may grow up on the street. Who knows? So we have 5-year-old kids still out in the street, homeless. Trying to in some seriously poor countries. So we know that. So I think we should be ending here. I think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Let me just do an attendance. What's your name, sir?
My name is Solin Januel.
Solin, no, Noel.
Yes, Noel, Januel, Jnnoel.
Okay, what I have is Noel. So I'm missing some words. It's supposed to be
Jnnoel. It's like a shortcut of Januel.
Okay, all right. Okay, I won't fight with that right now. Okay, who else do we have present? You said there's another student present. What's his name?
Yes, Brother Israel Idmailing.
Oh, Israel. Okay, right. Okay, so Israel is present. And so the other two students are not present. How would I know? How can I? So I can't do attendance with those two students, right? Because they'll be looking at it at some other point.
You would probably have to talk to the administration of the school, sir.
Because, if we, like I normally give points for just attendance.
Yes, sir.
So I wouldn't have no way of knowing, because if they look at the video, say tomorrow, obviously they're not present. I don't know. So like you said, I have to tease that out with them and see how they want to handle that. Okay. Well,
Yes.
you guys, so you have an idea of what we're going to be doing, what we're looking at, and basically this particular is the abnormal behavior. That's what we're looking at. Abnormal behavior. That's the topic. That's the name of this class. This particular thing is abnormal psychology. So I wanted to show up on your transcript as abnormal psychology, because then that's like a standard topic that should you move into another area, another country, another school, maybe you can use it and get some credit for it instead of have to go over. Okay, so see you guys, and see you all next week, same time, same place.
Yes, sir. See you too.
Okay.